like everyone's trying to have a mic drop moment. They just want to be like, boom, 240 characters.
Phil's trying to have a mic drop, but it's like falling down the stairs. Someone else.
More!
Lunch break! This episode of Lunch Break is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website or online store with built-in marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to start building your online presence today. Where's everybody?
Well, it's not just us today. It's also Julie Huang, and she wanted to get Chinese, Taiwanese food with us. So we got a little bit of that right now. Got some turkey rice.
Popcorn chicken.
Some rice cakes. Today we wanted to talk about something that is not normal for us on lunch break, but if you follow our social media, it might not be that surprising to you. This past year, activism and speaking up about social issues has become much more common.
It's the fact that you can't escape the effects of what's going on right now because we're more or less stuck at home. So we're focused on the news, and the news alone has been crazy. So to not have an opinion about it is a little impossible, I think.
I mean, technically, the news has always been crazy. Like the elections in 2016 were crazy.
Right.
The debate about police brutality and social, justice and criminal justice, that's been happening.
It's framed in a way that's never been before.
And I think the pandemic really does bring a different context over everything. I think with Wong Fu, like our main, mission has always been about representation through storytelling and in the film industry. Yeah, we have a lot of opinions and I guess a lot of quote unquote activism in that sense, just by us existing and us making stuff. And this year was definitely like a time when we just couldn't not speak about other things in other areas of the world. So that resulted in us, using our platform and our content creation for some of these topics and to face them head on. Like very early on, we released a music video that talked about the attacks on Asian Americans and trying to bring awareness to that because no one was talking about it. It's good that I feel like it's become definitely more mainstream knowledge now. But if you guys remember in March and April, no one was really talking about it. Thanks to Year of the Ox making an amazing music video, we released it on both of our channels. When the whole George Floyd thing happened, we put together this panel to talk about Asian American and African American solidarity. And then recently, we made a short film called A Long Time Coming that, captured a conversation that I think a lot of us as first or second generation kids were having with their immigrant families. It is definitely a little bit of a different shade of Wong Fu this year. And thankfully, there's been a lot of support for it. Of course, there's scrutiny towards it too. So we kind of wanted to take this episode. That was a long intro, but talk about just our perspective of activism, political activism or whatever, and just our own personal histories.
First to point out is that growing up you're always taught that, or even just like in your adulthood you're taught to separate politics and work, right? Politics is at home, work is at work, but because the lines are so blurred here, like our work is our home and our home is our work. And us being kind of like a front-facing company, the lines just get more blurry. So anytime we do go out and try to make a statement as a company, it really is us as individuals too, and as like real people, making these statements. There's no corporate entity that's like hovering over us to like force us to like say certain things, but we also just like have each other, that we have to look out for, and to make sure that what we're saying as a company reflects what I think, what you guys think, what the rest of the team thinks. So it's always really tricky to navigate that.
I feel like activism and advocacy, those like words are actually really, it sounds really heavy. So I think a lot of people get actually like pretty scared away. Like I think in college, even if like someone was like, oh, are you into activism? I would have been like, whoa, like that's like pretty intense.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays it's a little bit more nuanced. It's a scale, right? I think nowadays people are realizing that if you care about like other people and you're fighting for like other people other than yourself, I think that kind of is activism.
I totally agree with you. Like, that initially there was this perception of like, if you're an activist, you got to be in the streets, and it's become more broad. And some people might argue that it's a good thing because then it makes it more accessible to more people and information can spread. But then I also know that there's some people that are like, that's not enough, and you're not being angry enough or you're not doing enough. And so I think that's a tough line to kind of toe.
Even just like the idea of existing is that first step in activism, right? Like just being who we are as people, it is a form of activism. It's like us being Asian American, we are automatically representing Asian American by being like who we are, by going out in the world, right?
But you know what? You know what though? Like on the flip side, like that sounds really nice. But on the flip side of that, like there's a take on that too, where it's like I wish every time I stepped out, I wasn't representing my entire race. You know, like I don't think every white person when they wake up they're like, oh man, I gotta be a good white person because I'm representing everyone.
In the same way, us, you know, presenting as male or presenting as female, you're representing your gender too. You're representing your family, whatever. Like the more that's uncovered, the more that just by default you're representing that.
At the very minimum, right, on social media, we all have been participating in some type of information sharing. If you want to call it activism, you can. I probably wouldn't use that word for myself. I think just because I wouldn't want to take away from the people that are like, you know, actually devoting their lives to it. Maybe everyone can go around like, what was your guys' first experiences with activism or advocacy?
So my first experience was like learning about Asian American issues, and that was actually because I took an Asian American studies class to fulfill the gen ed of like minorities. As I was like taking the Asian American studies class, I was like, oh, there's probably like not that much history, right? I grew up in like predominantly white suburb, and so like for me, I feel like I was very privileged in like not having to care about other like issues. Like I was kind of grown up being like, oh yeah, like just care about the things that, you know, that affect you. And I learned in the Asian American studies class, like all of these like Asian American issue stuff. It's like Vincent Chin, you know, I learned about that. And we watched a bunch of like Asian American movies, but it was like, oh wow, there's like all of these things, but like Asian Americans aren't really represented in like mainstream media, but there's so much work being done that I don't see. And then I got involved in like the Asian American community in my college, and then I found a lot of people who cared about like Asian American representation, the model minority myth. Like I don't think I heard about the model minority myth until college. So that was like the first experience of me kind of being like, oh, these are a lot of things are happening that I didn't understand was happening in the community. I just thought like people were just living and, you know, whatever. Like I was very blind, I guess, to anything that's like not my problem.
Well, I guess my question is because, I mean, you went to college when there was Twitter, there was social media, there was Facebook. The issues of the world, you feel like it didn't get filtered down to you, it didn't hit you, or you just didn't really, you know, care when you were younger? Because I feel like now there's like, it's basically unavoidable to go anywhere on social media and not know about what's happening.
For me, like social media back then, like Facebook was just like a friend thing, right? And then I was only friends with like people my grade and my age. So like a lot of people my age didn't really care about news that much. Or if I did have friends who cared about the news, they weren't very public about it. They would just be like, oh yeah, I read the news. And honestly, like I didn't care about reading about the news, which is like, you know, yeah, it's very privileged of me to be like, oh, I don't care about the news. Like even the presidential elections, I was just like, I don't need to hear about this. Like it doesn't matter to me because I grew up in Illinois, so I'm like, oh, we're already like a blue state, so like if I vote, it doesn't matter, you know, or not. Like when I was 18, when I turned 18, like for me, I was like, it doesn't matter if I vote. And then I think when I was a freshman, it was like Obama and Mitt Romney, and I was like, Obama's totally gonna win. Like that was my mindset. But it was because I didn't know anything about the news. I didn't actually know that election was really close until like a few years ago. And this was just me kind of being like, I grew up very like maybe sheltered, and I was able to be ignorant, and I acknowledge that. But now it's like, now I have all these resources for me to be educated, and that's why like I'm learning a lot too still now.
I think also it's like our parents, a lot of it is cultural too. Like a lot of our parents came over and they probably didn't really care about government, or they were very private about it. And so, you know, they were raised a certain way to like not question things perhaps, or voice their opinions. So that was brought on to us. Like my parents never talked about politics. When I think of like, oh, the first time like I cared about activism or whatever, I think about like joining the recycling club at like in like middle school, and we would like pick up cans, and I was like, oh, I'm doing something good for the world, and like that was kind of it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say those like first experiences of like those like what is it, UNICEF? Those little like coin boxes that you would get. Like technically that is a form of activism.
What about you, Benson?
I mean, I think like getting to that point of like being consciously aware of like your role in the world is a huge step to take, because it is a confidence thing. And I guess growing up being Asian American and always kind of feeling othered, just the nature of the population too. It's like you're one person. So I think everything growing up kind of points you towards, oh, you're just another drop in the bucket, and like your voice isn't as significant as you think it is, right? But then like as I've kind of grown older, I realized that, you know, my voice and my presence does have an impact maybe on at least one other person. Once you kind of realize that, then it's like, oh, if my presence and my voice affects at least one person, it could be everybody at a certain point, right? And then it's like going that back and forth of like, how much responsibility should I have and how much responsibility do I have, right?
Also, being Asian too, and not seeing yourself really even represented in those spaces
Yeah.
of news, of politics, it makes you feel even less significant. Where it's like, oh, I really don't matter because, you know, we're not even talked about. Even as a whole community,
Yeah.
we're not enough to be talked about or represented. So I think that definitely plays a part into it too. And I think maybe that's why, especially even the whole COVID stuff this year, pushed a lot of Asian people to start caring, because like now in some sense we were being pushed into the forefront that we haven't really been in, you know, several decades.
Similar to Phil, I think early on, there's certain things that are easy to hop on board with. Environment, knowing that we have to take care of our planet, we're taught early in school. And along those lines, like the first time I realized that I had a strong opinion about something that was kind of almost something that wasn't really heard that I was advocating was like, if there's a bug in the classroom, don't kill it. Like, let's let it go. Let's let it go free. And for the most part, I was a pretty reserved kid. But the feeling of like, hey, let's respect life was something that really came to me early on. You know, beyond that, later on, I would say the greatest platform that made me realize my place and also my voice was like 15 years ago when Wong Fu Production started. Honestly, it started because it was fun making videos, but as soon as we hit the road and we were meeting these amazing individuals that were like the only Asian kid in their class that had so much, you know, challenge and struggles that they dealt with that we here in California, we didn't have to, made me really realize our place and our responsibility and the honor of representing our community. That's the first place I really felt it. I haven't really been like channeling my voice to others, because in the end, the way I see things is the first person to change or the first person to make a difference is yourself. I didn't really like join in the conversation as much as some others. Because it always came back to, well, I can only control how I feel and what I do, so I'm going to do that first.
Yeah, I think these days everyone's dealing with how they want to share their opinion. I would say that maybe the general person on the street, like maybe they might not think that much. They'll just tweet something, they'll share something on Facebook. But I would say definitely for us here at Wong Fu, and you kind of brought this up earlier, Benson, it's like we do feel like we are for some reason representing a very large group, or we're like this big corporation or something that we have to like make this well thought out stance or something, and if it's not correct then it's going to disappoint a lot of people, and that's a tough place to be. Like I've literally lost sleep over a tweet that I was like, oh, should I say this? You know, if I do, then it might be this way, and then but if I don't, it's going to be this way. And I don't think the normal person has to like worry about that, but for us at Wong Fu, like we wrestled for a while on certain parts of the script of the short film, or the script of like, you know, the talking head and the interviews and stuff. Like it was a really huge weight on our shoulders.
Each Instagram post had like hours long meetings, you know, like it was not easy for us to make those statements.
And I'll say this, it's not that it wasn't easy because it's like that we didn't believe in what we were saying. It's more like with social media these days, anything can be misconstrued.
There's two sides to everything, right?
Right. And even if you don't agree with the other side, you just know that there's people that want to, on the very worst side, troll, right? And then on the more thoughtful side, like they actually believe and they want to like start a debate, and then it makes the comment section just a mess or whatever. And like, not to say that there can't be, you know, a good exchange of ideas and stuff, but yeah, I think a lot of it also came down to how people would perceive us. And you know, that was a tough thing, because it's like, hey, as Wong Fu, like, you know, a lot of you are following us for one particular mission, which is, you know, our representation of Asian Americans in media, which I guess a large majority of you guys, support. But then now you bring in this other ingredient, and like of that group that supports this one mission, they might be divided on this other. Thankfully, like everyone on this team, like we are somewhat aligned, but we definitely challenge each other too. And we have good debates in the office. And that's the thing. Most of these things have to be like in-person conversations, but when it's on social media, everyone's just the most vile and most I don't give a about what I say, and so you end up with just terrible conversations.
Like advocacy recently have been very like, you can't even have a discussion. It's like you're right and you're wrong. At least that's what I see on social media. Like I see posts of people having differing opinions and they won't even hear the other person out. And at one point, there's always going to be like someone who throws an insult, and then it just goes from there. And I'm like wondering, like, was it like this before? Like from what I remember, like I don't remember.
It's always been like
this. Really?
I think a big problem or concern with social media is, in general, is comparison, right? So you automatically have this level of either you don't know as much as I do, or you're not doing as much as I'm doing, which makes you lesser. I mean, mainly those two things. And those two things combined with someone just wanting to help already puts it in a really volatile place for development. Something that was meant to be good, as soon as you throw in a comparison and shaming, then what good can come from that?
Like, I feel like a lot of the ones, like these discussions that aren't very productive are some people who are very prideful. Like, even if like someone is laying out the facts, if that person is so prideful that they don't want to even admit that they're wrong and like have an actual conversation about it, then that discussion is just over.
But it has to go both ways. I'm sure the other person feels that other person is not being too prideful too, which is why like it's kind of like when you get in a fight with your friend or your girlfriend, boyfriend over text. I'm sure like there's been times where you're having a text conversation and you're like, I feel like something's getting misconstrued. I'm gonna call you or something, right?
Yeah.
And that saves so much trouble, but we can't have that. You can't have that on social media, so you literally get the worst types of conversations. I think it was like I saw Freddie Wong one time post this, but he's like, at least on Twitter, like everyone's trying to have a mic drop moment. They just want to be like, boom, 240 characters or 200, like I'm out. But then so many of these topics need nuanced conversation.
It's like Phil's trying to have a mic drop, but it's like falling down the stairs. It's
like, someone else is catching it right before. And they're like, no, me, my turn.
It's like wrestling. It's like wrestling when they have him pinned, and it's like 1, 2, and then right before the guy moves, and then they're like, not yet. I got something to say. Actually,
like that's the thing. It's like if you're gonna have a discussion, no one really wins. It's like you're just trying to learn from each other. I feel.
Yeah, you end up either getting only people that are in your own echo chamber, which I understand is not a good thing either, or you just are attracting like the worst people also that are just trying to get under your skin. So I feel like social media is really good because it gave everyone a voice. And then it's really bad because it gave everyone a voice.
If everybody's mic drops at the same time, it doesn't matter.
It's just noise.
I used to think that it was balanced, that the good of social media at least balance the bad, but I'm starting to think it's more bad.
I mean, that's like the thing. Like, you don't have to voice out your opinion on social media specifically to be an activism. Yeah. I think people like, especially when like the protests were happening, I remember like everyone was shaming, being like, if you're not posting about BLM, then you're on the other side. And I'm like, guys, they don't want to be vocal, and that's okay. Like, you don't know if they're donating on the side or, if they're doing their own thing to help. Like, just because you don't see it doesn't mean they're not doing anything.
That's something that I feel like Wong Fu definitely got a little bit of. And here's the thing. We would post something, and then we would get comments of like, oh, well, why didn't you say this about this other thing?
Or say it sooner, right?
Well, we did. We actually made a video about that other thing. And so a lot of times people just make knee-jerk reactions, and they're like, oh, if I didn't see it, then it didn't matter, or it didn't. If it didn't reach me, then it doesn't exist. But it's like, no, we made multiple videos and had multiple posts about issue A, and just because now we're talking about issue B, and you're like, well, what about issue A? Like, well, yeah, then literally just go back 2 videos and you'll see what we did.
And it's a capacity thing. To expect that we have a public stance on everything, I think is not very practical. Not that we don't, but like our main goal is not to make sure everyone knows our stance on everything. On the note of the right way to be an activist, or the right or wrong way, and this idea of that, I think the best way is to be true to yourself in however you want to do it. With Wong Fu, we decided we're known for scripted narratives, so we made a short that addressed issues that were current, and it felt, I'm like more than happy to talk about that because it's real, it's true to me, it's true to our experiences, and that I might not have shared as many posts as someone else did, but at least I can speak honestly to the way that I chose to be vocal about something.
And we haven't even mentioned just the part of social media with like fact checking, right? Like reposting things and like actually doing the due diligence to backtrack on these accounts and like making sure that the stuff you're reposting is even legit, like there's so much like
misinformation,
unfortunately like fake news is a real thing right now, and when that term was first coined it was like, wait, what? But then like it just almost seems flooded now.
Sorry, just to go back real quick on what Wes said too, like in terms of people wanting us to take or have a stance on everything. The thing is, like, I understand why people want that out of the people that they're fans of, or that they follow. Like, you want to know that you're aligned, or that the person you're supporting, you're aligned with, right? And so, yeah, it does suck to know or find out or feel like that's not the case, But it is true, like, it's a capacity thing, like, if you're following a singer or an actor or a writer or whatever for a particular thing, but then you want them to care or talk about all these issues, it's like, where do you draw the line of, okay, how many issues do you need to speak about? If we talk about issue A, B, even C, throw in a D once in a while. There's literally multiple alphabets of problems and issues in this world, and it's kind of a tall order to ask of the people that you're following to like have a comment on everything. Everyone wants to kind of get their issue heard, right? And I can understand why it's frustrating or why you feel unsettled if you're not getting that from the people that you're following, right? But it is a capacity thing. I actually think like the human brain wasn't designed to have this much information about all the people in the world too. Like, I should not know what an angry guy in Maine is saying about me. Like, I should not know that. Like, that's like my brain can't handle those things.
On a more positive note, I have had some direct messages where I do engage in some not even debate but conversation actually, and it's been great. Like, in the end it's like, hey, I didn't realize that this was a good talk, and we actually don't end up like being totally aligned, but it's like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I've had more than a handful of these conversations, and it does give me a lot of hope actually. For the people that want to listen and understand, it is possible to get to a place where you just understand things better.
And I'll say this, my encouragement to people would also be to like look at the net effect of what someone is trying to do, or what their version of activism or how they're voicing themselves. Like, it's not productive to like nitpick and just to point out faults. But like, if you're trying to encourage people to be more vocal, it's better to celebrate the positives rather than like, hey, why? Like, what's that one thing that you didn't do? Versus, hey, look at all these other things you're doing. More of that, please. That's kind of what I'm seeing on social media. Like, people just want to jump on a gotcha moment because it makes them feel like that's their mic drop.
And they're like higher.
And that they're higher, right? But yeah, if you look at what people are doing as a whole, understand that people are human and that they're working through their own like issues. Maybe there's mental health involved in terms of like all these problems in the world. It's like we should have a little bit more empathy for people as they're going through it, and celebrate the ones that are really doing like the tough work, right? Also, but it's just understand that there's different levels.
If anything, final words is go vote.
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be it.
Doesn't matter what you say anywhere. Go vote. If you have the means, donate to things that you care about, to people that you care about. If there's information you want to share, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the best way for your voice to be like actually heard is if you vote.
And try to see things for yourself. There's a lot of people that are tugging this way and that. Make up your own mind and go vote. And I think that's the best thing you can do.
Well, thanks, Julie. I kind of feel like you were invited to a table where like all the people were arguing and stuff, and you're just like sitting here like, why am I in this conversation? But anyways, everyone, thank you so much for following us through this year of us kind of figuring out and developing our voice in this area. It hasn't been easy, but the fact that you're still watching and that you still support us has been great and really encouraging. And just know that we understand that there's still a lot to learn also, and there's still a lot of growth for us as activists or people who are, advocating for certain things. Everything's a journey, so we appreciate you being on that journey with us and being patient with us and being supportive. And also special thanks to our care holders on Patreon, whose monthly generosity really makes a difference for us during this time.
And also thanks to everybody that has been purchasing from our Wong Fu store. All that revenue really helps to keep us going.
We'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.
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 We want to give a special thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode of Lunch Break. We actually just finished our huge warehouse sale the last couple of weeks, and we're so thankful for everyone's support. Setting up that store online was super straightforward and simple. Since we already built our website with Squarespace, it was really easy to add that storefront on as a new page. There's a bunch of amazing templates available, and their customer service is top notch. So head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready, use code WONGFU at checkout for 10% off your first purchase of a domain or a website. And if you missed out on the warehouse sale, don't worry. We're working on some brand new items that we can't wait to share. Be on the lookout, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.